right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Leadership Unscripted, where we have honest conversations about leadership, education, parenting, character, resilience, systems, and the future we are building. I am your host, Dr. Ryan Dale, and tonight's topic: the child who never hears no. What happens next? So let me begin with a statement that may sound uncomfortable. Sometimes the most loving word an adult can say to a child is no. Not an angry no. Not a no used to control everything, but a calm, clear, appropriate no. A no says that you cannot hurt someone because you are angry. You cannot take something simply because you want it. You cannot interrupt everyone until you get attention. You cannot avoid every responsibility. You cannot expect the entire environment to change whenever you become uncomfortable. Children need love. Children need affection. Children need patience. They need understanding. But children also need limits. Because one day, the world will say no to them. A school will say no. A friend will say no. An employer will say no. A relationship will say no. A bank account will say no. The law will say no. Life itself will sometimes say no. The question is not whether a child will eventually encounter limits. The question is whether we will prepare that child to manage those limits with resilience, dignity, self-control, and maturity. Tonight, we are examining what happens when children are protected from every disappointment, rescued from every consequence, excused from every responsibility, and taught, often unintentionally, that their feelings should control everyone around them. So I'm going to begin tonight's show with a scenario. A child asks for an expensive item in a store. The parent says no. The child begins shouting, crying, throwing items, and demanding that the parent buy it. People are watching. The parent is embarrassed. What should the parent do? Let me hear from you. What should the parent do in such a situation? Keisha says one slap. But Keisha, what lesson would that slap teach a child? You want them to call mash on you? So what do you do? What should that parent do? Said no and mean no. But the child is throwing things in the supermarket, crying, shouting, and is demanding that you buy it. Tell him no, but it doesn't start there. It should have been through training from the house. True, Dale, but what about some children who they know what is expected, but when they go in public, they want to show their color? When they see people and crowd, they forget who they are. In such a situation, what do you do? Do you buy the item because the child is clearly distressed? Do you threaten the child loudly in front of everyone? Nikki says that's why a slap would work. C, do you remain calm? Remove the child from the situation if necessary and keep the original boundary. Or D, promise to buy something else later. What do you do as a parent in this situation? Welcome, Kenisha Williams. Thank you for joining the live. C. The most appropriate answer is generally C. The child emotion may be real. The disappointment may be real as well. But the emotion does not automatically control or make the boundary wrong. This is an important parenting principle. We can validate a child's feelings without surrendering the adult's responsibility. Actual answer or the political correct answer. Dav, I want the answer, you see, that will not send you to jail. That's the answer I want. I want the answer that will actually teach a child a lesson. Because as parents, we can validate a child's feelings without surrendering the adult's responsibility. So you can say, well, I'm not seeing a Jamaica parent coming out here, but you can say, I know you are disappointed. I understand you wanted it. And it's okay to feel upset. But the answer is still no. That is not cruelty. That is called emotional coaching. So you're not going to rough them. You're not going to embarrass them. You're going to let them know it's okay to be disappointed. I know you are disappointed. But my answer is still no. So my next question, should children be allowed to express disappointment? Is it okay for children? Should children be allowed to express when they are disappointed? Gentle parenting has its place. Exactly. Yes, absolutely. When children are disappointed, it's okay to have them express it. And further, let's go back to say it starts in the home. What no actually teaches. When used appropriately, the word no teaches more than denial. It teaches several life skills. Welcome, Maple. So when you tell a child no, it teaches them several life skills. The first one, delayed gratification. Their feeling is valid as well. Thank you, Kenisha, for that. Their feeling is valid. Yes, it's valid. Thank you. So the first life skill you're teaching them when they hear no is delayed gratification. Children learn that wanting something does not mean receiving it immediately. You're teaching them emotional regulation. Children learn that disappointment can be survived. The feeling may be intense, but it will pass. You are teaching them to respect boundaries. Children learn that other people have rights, needs, time, possessions, and personal space. When you tell a child no, you are teaching them self-control. And in self-control, that means they learn that impulses do not always require action. When you tell a child no, you're teaching them to problem solve. When the first option is unavailable, children learn to consider alternatives. When you tell a child no, you're teaching them resilience. They discover that frustration is uncomfortable, but not catastrophic. And finally, the seventh one, when you tell a child no, you're teaching them social responsibility. And what's that? They learn that being part of a family, classroom, team, or society requires that sometimes they're going to compromise. Things will not always go their way. Things will not always go their way. So my question to you, which of the 7 skills do you believe children struggle the most with in today's society? Which of these 7 skills do children struggle the most with in today's society? Waiting, emotional regulation, respecting boundaries, self-control, problem solving, resilience, or learning to compromise. Which of those skills you see children struggling most with in today's society? Let me hear from you. Do they struggle to wait until it's their time? Keisha says all of the above. They struggle for waiting. Emotional regulation. Some of them can't control their emotions. Some of them, they don't respect boundaries at all. They don't know their limits. Self-control. They don't problem solve. They see that, they want that. Resilience and compromise. And there are important boundaries between, there are important distinctions, between boundaries. And we need to recognize that boundaries are not rejection. Some adults struggle to say no because they fear the child will feel unloved. Some adults struggle to say no because they fear the child feel unloved. Perhaps the adult experienced harsh parenting. Perhaps they grew up without material things and now want to give the child everything. Perhaps they feel guilty because they work long hours, so they're trying to compensate. Perhaps the family has experienced separation, loss, or instability. Perhaps saying yes feels easier than managing the reaction to no. But we must separate 2 ideas. We must separate boundary from rejection. And remember that a boundary is not the same as rejection. Here are the truth, the hard truth. Please tap the live, please share the live if you're just joining. Our topic for tonight, a child who never hears no. Here are some hard truths for parents tonight, or any adults who deal with children. You can say no and still remain loving. A teacher can correct a child and remain caring. A coach can require discipline and still remain supportive. A principal can apply a consequence and still believe in the child's future. So my question is, why do you think some adults find it difficult to say no to children? Why is it so difficult for some adults to say no to children? I will go first. Some of them feel out of guilt. Some adults fear to say no to children out of guilt. Some of them believe that the child is their friend. Some of them believe the child is their friend. But what message are we sending? What message are we sending? Dr. Jackson says because they don't want to seem mean. So true. They don't want to seem mean. They want to be the preferred parent, the favorite parent. Oh, I prefer daddy. Daddy give me everything. Or they prefer grandma. Or it's a way of showing they love them. Could be. Sometimes adults are not giving children what they need. They're giving children what helps the adult avoid discomfort. But sometimes, Dr. Jackson, we think by saying yes, we are making them feel love, and that's our way of showing them love. But sometimes, That yes is teaching the child how to avoid and teaching us how to avoid discomfort. And that is a difficult truth. Here's a story, living through their child. So true, Nikki. Here's a story. Imagine a child, love for me shown more in tough times. Let me give you a drum roll for that, Dr. D. Let me give you a drum roll for that. That deserves a drum roll. And some parents, some carers, some teachers need to recognize that. So here's a story. Imagine a child who asks to stay up late. The adult says no. The child complains. The adult repeats no. The child cries. The adult explains. The child shouts. The adult becomes frustrated. The child continues. Eventually, the adult says, "Fine, just this once." What has the child learned? What has the child learned in this situation? So, the child wants to stay up late. The adult says no. The child complains. The adult repeats no. The child starts to cry. The adult explains why they cannot stay up late. The child begins to shout. The adult becomes frustrated and the child continues to shout. Eventually, the adult says, "Fine, just this once." What has the child learned? Let me see the comments here. Nikki says persistence, manipulation. Shelley says the child is saying that the child is learning that shouting is okay. Dav says that sometimes being persistent gets you what you want. And Nikki, that's an important one, Nikki. How to break a weak parent. And Dav says, I can manipulate mom if I don't stop. And those are some really drum roll responses tonight. Those are some really drum roll worthy response tonight. So the deeper lesson is, the first no is not final. Escalation works. That's what the child is saying. When mom says no, that's not mom's final answer. Let me escalate it. Let me start shouting. Mom will yield. Forever blessed that the child know what to make mother say yes to him or she. So true. So now imagine. Welcome, Ashley. Welcome. You're right on time, and thank you for joining. Our topic for tonight, the child who never hears no. Now imagine this pattern happening repeatedly. The child asks for an advice. No. The child argues. The answer changes. The child refuses to complete homework. The adult insists. The child becomes disruptive. The adult completes the task for the child. The child misbehaves at school. The school applies a consequence. The parent attacks the school without first examining the facts. The child learns, someone will rescue me. My reaction is more powerful than the rule. Adults will eventually surrender. Good night, Nadine. Welcome. Thank you for joining Leadership Unscripted. Our topic for tonight, Miss Nadine, the child who never hears no. The child learns that consequences are negotiable if I create enough discomfort for the parent. So here's my question for you, everybody on the live. What behavior are adults unintentionally rewarding when they change a boundary after a tantrum? What behavior are adults unintentionally rewarding when they change a boundary after a tantrum? One of the first behavior I believe adults are unintentionally rewarding is that if I push back at when you say no, I will get what I want. That the first thing the child is learning. Disrespect. So true. So there's a way to do things. There's a way to teach lessons. And there are valuable lessons in saying no. Because a lot of parents make them think they're in charge. For the child will do it exactly. If they push back and you change your response, the child is going to do it again. Whether you like it or not. The child will do it again. It's like you're rewarding them. Alicia said the government has given children too much rights. Ammunition to use against schools. And it's not only the government, It's the way the world is going. The shift. The shift in how the world is now operating. But I think parents and schools owe it to children to hold them accountable. Parents owe it to their child to teach them certain skills. And that's where tonight I'm turning it away from it being the responsibility of schools and putting it back on parents. It starts there in the home. When you say no, stop allowing children to push your button. And it happens in the classroom too. As a class teacher, you set a rule. You put a rule in place. Parents and children, they are aware of that rule. But a child breaks the rule and you ignore it. A child breaks the rule and you ignore it. And guess what? That's a culture you start setting for your class. And then another child start observing that and start breaking the same rule. And in a month, your entire class not paying you any attention. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Children, we must teach our children that respecting authority, respecting no, means that, or else, 5-10 years down the line, they're going to learn some hard truth. Some hard truth. So key point from that. Children repeat behaviors that produce results. And exactly, Alicia, no is a full sentence. So children repeat behaviors that produce results. That does not make the child evil, no. It means the environment has taught the child a lesson. So if I do this, and if I shout and scream, and you give me what I want, you're telling me that that's an acceptable behavior. You're the teacher here. You're telling me that's an acceptable behavior. So every time I want something, shouting and screaming it is. And it's the same thing. Let me spin it on you. Some of you, if you're at home with your spouse, and females, you want money to do some extra shopping. And if your husband head is bald like mine, and if you stand up beside Onion and say, hon, I feel to go on the road to get some stuff. And you know that once you start brushing your husband bald head, he becomes soft. And you see the wallet comes out. What do you think the wife is going to do? Every single time they see something on Shein or Fashion Nova, oh boy, that head will forever be getting some rub down. It's the same thing. It's actually rub the head, yes, exactly. They're the same thing. Children learn, and they're going to do whatever get them results. Same thing with us as adults. Same thing with us as adults. If we do something that will get us results, we keep repeating the same thing. Same thing. Always rub his head. Nadine says always rub his head. Exactly. You want result. You want what you want. So you have to do what you want. And so that's one of the reasons why I wrote George's Journey. Rub till it shine. Dav says rub till it shine. Exactly, Dav. And that's one of the reasons I wrote this book, George's Journey. One of my children's book. This conversation, and it connects naturally about children saying no, children having boundaries. So this story explores courage. It explores responsibility, choices, bullying, and the importance of standing up for what is right. Children develop character not only by hearing lessons, but by facing situations in which they must make responsible choices. Hear this next question now. What happens when a child rarely hears no? 1. Frustration becomes intolerable. Operant conditioning. So true. Operant conditioning. So true. What happens when a child rarely hears no? Frustration becomes intolerable. The child may interpret ordinary disappointment as a crisis. Waiting feels unbearable. Losing feels unfair. Correction feels like an attack. And that is why we have to teach them the skills and explain to them and stick to what no when we say no. We have to stick to the no when we say no. When a child rarely hears no, authority becomes negotiable. When a child rarely hears no, authority for them becomes negotiable. The child may assume that every instruction requires agreement before compliance. You ever hear teachers or parents, everybody on the live, have you ever been somewhere and you hear a parent negotiating with a child? To get the child to do anything, the parent have to actually negotiate and come to an agreement with that child to get the child to do anything. Or you walk into a classroom and you hear the teachers negotiating with the children to get them to do their work or to get them to comply. You are teaching children that authority is negotiable. And they're going to ask you, why do I have to? I don't feel like it. You cannot make me. My mother said I do not have to. Let me read some of the comments in the live. Parents must always be the parents and stick to what they say. No mean no, but many times we give in. So true. I see it almost every day. Parents negotiating with children. When children always hear no, they start thinking that responsibility is externalized. So when things go wrong, someone else is always to be blamed. They blame everybody except themselves. They don't take responsibility. Sometimes them asking why isn't necessarily a bad thing though. Yes, I agree with that, Dav. But it's how you respond. It is how you respond. But if they ask why, you provide a response, a respectful response to them. But that doesn't mean you change. Because they will use questioning to manipulate you. So if they ask why, you're supposed to respond. You're supposed, and that's why we acknowledged earlier that children have a right to share when they're disappointed. You give them, you want them to speak up. But when they ask you why, you provide why you say no, but you don't compromise. You don't compromise. They get the answer. They get the answer, then comply. Exactly. So when things go wrong, so you have some children who believe that when things go wrong, they blame everybody around them. You ever sometimes at school, and a child does something, and the child is able to tell you what everybody else did except taking responsibility for their actions. Sometimes children are sent to my office, and when you ask them what happened, they start telling you, sir, the teacher was unfair. They start telling the referee was biased. The other child started it. The task was too difficult. Oh, teacher did not remind me. So they start blaming everything. And sometimes these children, they go home with this blaming mentality. Believing that responsibility is externalized. They don't take on responsibility for their actions. And they go home and you hear the parents start blowing up your phone and messaging all over the place. And they're feeding into this narrative. No lesson is being taught here. We need to teach children that responsibility begins when they're able to say, I made a mistake. I should have listened. I hurt someone. I need to try again. I need to make it right. We need to start coaching our children so they start taking responsibility for their actions. Another thing, when a child constantly hear no, well, when they never hear no, they start thinking relationships become one-sided. A child who expects constant accommodation may struggle when friends have different preferences, boundaries, and needs. So, your child they don't know what it means to hear no. They go to school, they're on the playground, they want to play a game, they want to join a game, and the children in the game says no. They want a ball or something, they want to borrow this, and the child says no. And then later I get a call, oh, my child was being bullied today on the playground. No. You as a parent did not teach your child that they will not always hear yes. You is the reason your child is thinking they are being bullied. No. The child was never being bullied. The child only know yes. So the one time they hear no, the one time they refused in an activity, the one time their friend says no, they want to borrow something and another child says no, you're not getting it. It doesn't belong to you. Oh, my child was being bullied. When as a parent, you need to teach your child that not every time they're going to hear yes. When a child never hears no, they start to think correction is humiliation. If children are rarely corrected, ordinary feedback may feel deeply threatening. The child may become defensive, angry, withdrawn, or dishonest. Everything they take personal. They want to hear everything yes. And hear this one. Children who rarely hear no, entitlement grows. They become entitled. The child may confuse access with ownership and desire with deserving. So here are two things I want you to take away tonight from me. You see, when children rarely hears no, the resilience that you want to build in them remains underdeveloped. Because resilience does not emerge from a life without frustration. Take that from me. Resilience does not emerge from a life without frustration. It develops through manageable difficulty, supportive relationships, and repeated opportunities to recover. So when you always tell your children, everything is yes, resilience in that child remains underdeveloped. Another thing, empathy may weaken. If the environment revolves around one child's preferences, the child may have fewer opportunities to consider how decisions affect others. So it's all about them. The world revolves around them. So let us debate some statements. I will read each statement and you type agree, disagree, or depends. So I'm gonna read some statements and all you will type agree, disagree, or it depends. Statement 1. Children should be allowed to express all their feelings. Let me hear from you. Children should be allowed to express all their feelings. Every single thing you say, you should allow children to express how they feel about it. Agree, disagree, or depends? Once I get 3 responses, I'll move on to the next one. So I need one more. So I see 2 agreed already. One more response. Children should be allowed to express all their feelings. And yes, you're correct. Children should be able. Depends. Short said depends. I see agreed. Children should be able to express feelings safely. But expressing anger does not mean hurting others, destroying property, or disrespecting people. So it depends on how you allow them to express their feelings. So nothing is wrong. So as some of you said agree. You agree that they're supposed to be allowed to express their feelings. But in short saying depend, meaning depends on how they express that feelings. Solid responses. This one. A good parent should prevent a child from experiencing unnecessary disappointment. A good parent should prevent a child from experiencing unnecessary disappointment. Agree, disagree, or depends? Let me hear 3 responses. A good parent should prevent a child from experiencing unnecessary disappointments. Agree, disagree, or depends? You said unnecessary, yes. So you agree. Dav agree. Nikki disagree. Okay. Agree, okay. Nikki said disagree. So it comes down to parenting. However, keep in mind that some disappointment can be prevented. But disappointment itself is not automatically harmful. Appropriate disappointment teaches coping. So Dav said once it is necessary, then bring on the disappointment. Alright? So it depends on the scenario. This one now. Once it's unnecessary. Okay. This one. Children should receive explanation whenever an adult says no. Children should receive explanations whenever an adult says no. Children should receive explanation whenever an adult says no. Disagree. Shorty said disagree. Nikki said depend. So explanations are often helpful. But adults should not become trapped in endless debate with children. Sometimes a brief explanation is enough. And depends on what the situation is. Sometimes no is a full sentence as well. So it depends on the situation. But explanations are often helpful. But again, it comes with the context. So I want all of everybody in here, which in some cases it's a no, exactly. Not debating, but if they ask, then it will be helpful, yes. You can provide some explanation there. So here's I want everyone to put on their parent hat now. Hear this one. The birthday party. Your child has been invited to a birthday party. The child wants to attend, but has repeatedly refused to complete agreed responsibilities at home. You previously explained that attending the party depended on completing those responsibilities. The work is still complete. The child now cries and says, "Everyone else will be there. You are ruining my life." What do you do? What do you do? Dav says you don't even have to go any further with that scenario. What do you do? But the child is crying and the child is saying, "Now look." But the child says, everyone else will be there. All my classmates will be there. You are ruining my life. And you're still going to have no heart? No little soft spot? To say, okay, He's not going. Okay, I see some firm parents in here. He's not going. No means no. You did not do the chores, you're not going. Okay, my child knows that tears don't faze me. Okay, he's not going. Too bad. Okay. Okay. This one now, which is harder? Saying no or remaining consistent after saying it? Which is harder? As a parent, as an adult, which is more difficult? Is it saying no or remaining consistent after saying it? Which is more difficult? Thank you to everyone for joining. Please share the live. Share the live to a friend. And tap the screen so the live can be placed on the FYP so other persons can see the live. So while you listen in on the conversation, please tap the screen so we can get some likes out there as well. No. For many adults, saying no is not the hardest part. The hardest part is surviving the child's response without changing the answer. And that's true. Sometimes saying no is not the hardest part, you know. It's surviving the child's response, how the child will react without you getting soft or being manipulated to changing your answer. Hear this other scenario now. One of the most difficult situations occurs when a school says no and the family immediately says yes. So we're talking about parents and schools disagreeing now. And I'm starting by saying one of the most difficult situations occurs when a school says no and the family immediately says yes. The teacher says, the assignment must be completed. The parent says, my child was tired, so it does not matter. The school says, there is a consequence for the behavior. The parent says, my child should not experience a consequence. The coach says, your child cannot play after repeatedly missing practice. The adult demands that the child be included. What lesson does the child receive? The child may learn that every institution must adjust to them. This does not mean schools are always right. Teachers can make mistakes. Policies can be applied unfairly. Children can be misunderstood. Parents should ask questions before advocating, but advocacy should not remove accountability. So we're not saying teachers don't make mistakes, schools don't make mistakes. Sometimes policies can be unfair. But parents, before you start advocating, ask the right questions before you start advocating for your child. Because advocacy should not remove accountability. Hear this one. If a child comes home with being disappointed, a parent should say, I will listen to your side and I will also speak with the adults involved. So instead of running with every story the child comes home with, listen to their side, but let it be clear to them that you're going to listen to what the adult has to say first, as well, before jumping to conclusion. If something is unfair, I will support you. It is important that they know that. If they were treated unfairly, you're going to support them as a parent. However, if you made a poor choice, I will also support you in taking responsibility. So your child must know that one, you're going to listen to them, but you're going to speak with the adults also. They must know that if something unfair happened, you are going to support them. However, if they are at fault, you're also going to support them in taking responsibility. So key statement here. Supporting a child does not always mean removing the consequence. Sometimes support means helping the child face the consequence, repair the harm, and make a better decision next time. And that's a life lesson you're teaching there. Now we're going to talk about the difference between punishment, consequence, and discipline. The difference between punishment, consequence, and discipline. So what is punishment? Punishment focuses primarily on making someone suffer for wrongdoing. It can become angry, aggressive, excessive, humiliating, or disconnected from the behavior. That's punishment. A consequence, however, is a result that follows a choice. It should be proportionate, understandable, and where possible, connected to the behavior. So that's why we don't punish children. We apply consequence. Because punishment and consequence is different. The school should not, parents should not punish children. Because punishment can become angry, it can become excessive, it can become humiliating for the child, and sometimes it is disconnected from the behavior. It doesn't teach them any lesson when you punish them. But when you apply a consequence, you ensure the consequence is proportionate. The child understands the consequence, and the consequence is connected to the behavior. For example, a child misuses a device. So, a consequence is the access is temporarily restricted. A punishment would be to mash up the device, dash it away, destroy it. No. You restrict access temporarily so the child learn from that mistake. You don't get angry and throw it away. A child damages something, so you allow them to help repair it, or you take away some of their allowance and you replace it with it so they learn from it. Or you let them save out of their allowance until they're able to replace it. Dove says exactly, it is important to learn the difference. A child refuses to prepare, so they may be experience the outcome of being unprepared. So you have to ensure that we apply a consequence. We don't punish children. Because when you punish them, sometimes you humiliate them. It becomes excessive, and you don't want that. You don't want that. When you talk about discipline now, discipline means teaching. Healthy discipline asks, what must this child learn? How will the child repair the harm? How can the adult prevent repetition? What support is needed for this child? What boundaries must remain? So you see the difference between punishment, consequence, and discipline. They are different. And we must never punish children. We must never punish children. Because punishment can be excessive. Can be angry or taking out your personal stress on the child. No. You apply consequence. So if a child misuse their computer, go onto some platform or website they're not supposed to go onto, you don't destroy the laptop. You don't throw it away. You have a conversation. You restrict them from using it temporarily. So they learn that next time when you're granted back access, if you do it again, this restriction may become permanent. But at first you don't destroy it. You're not teaching any lesson there. Because in everything we want to teach children, children must walk away from their experiences learning valuable life lessons. They must not walk away feeling humiliated. And sometimes, I'm going to say it, sometimes some children, that's the reason some children hate parents and hate teachers and hate schools. That's why some children don't like some adults. That's why you will have a child in one class and they are fine and happy. and they go to the next class and that child becomes so unhappy. They don't like the adult because it's the experience. How you correct them. You punish instead of applying consequence. That's not the right thing. You must apply consequence for actions. You don't punish. You don't punish. Because punishment can be excessive. Punishment can be excessive. So I want you to pretend to be a school leader or a teacher, anyone. A student repeatedly interrupt lessons. Remember to like the live. We want to get to 25,000 likes tonight. Like the live while you listen. I know the conversation is heavy, but like the live while you listen. Last night we got to 22,000 last night. We want to get to 25,000 tonight. Now here's the scenario. A student repeatedly interrupts lessons, refuses directions, and prevents others from learning. The teacher has used reminders, private conversations, classroom supports, and contact with home, but the behavior continues. When a consequence is introduced, the parent says, "My child does not respond well to consequences. You need to understand them better." What should the school do? A. Remove the consequences to preserve the relationship with the parent. B. Apply the harshest available sanction. C. Continue supportive intervention while maintaining clear boundaries and proportionate accountability. What should the school do? In such a situation, what should the school do? Yield to the parent by removing all the consequences? Kaisha says C. Because clearly, the home is not getting the message. The home doesn't see the need that with every action, there are consequences. So as a school, as a place built for learning, when the home negates its responsibility, schools must take on that role. So as a school, it is our job, it is your job to continue supporting the child, maintain the boundaries, and ensure there's accountability, proportionate accountability for the action. Regardless of what the parents might say, hold firm. Every action, there are consequences. And once those consequences are proportionate, they're not excessive, right, you hold firm. So I'm going to ask 3 questions, and you're going to type yes or no. First question. We have to prepare them for the real world. That's true, Mandy. They must be prepared for the real world. And sometimes we fail, the home fail, and sometimes school fail. Because sometimes we allow parents to dictate what happened in the schools. Sometimes we allow parents to, you apply a consequence and the parent call. And you change your mind. Shouldn't be. Shouldn't be. Don't ever yield to that. Don't ever yield to that. Don't ever yield to that. Because it is sending a clear message to that child as well. Man, they said the system in place do not always help. That's true. But once, as I says, once they want a consequence you're applying, it's proportionate. It fits the action. Stick to what you're doing. Now here's a question. I just want yes and no respond. Should children be allowed to negotiate rules? Yes or no? Should children be allowed to negotiate rules? Should children be allowed to negotiate rules? I see a no come up. I see no. Right? Yeah, right. You never you negotiate with children. You don't negotiate with them. They're free to express their disappointment, of course. They're free to ask why, but when it comes on to you negotiating, You do this, I do that. You do this, I give you that. I'm going to do this, so you have to give me that. No, you don't do that. Slippery slope. Slippery, slippery slope. Slippery slope. This next one. Should parents apologize when they say no unfairly? Should parents apologize when they say no unfairly? Or should adults apologize? Should teachers, should principals, should any adult? Should we apologize when we say no unfairly? After we say no, we realize that, oh wow, I made a mistake. Yes. Yes. And too often I see adults refusing to apologize to children. And that says a lot about your character as an adult. That says a lot. Any adult who know you do something wrong and you're afraid to apologize to a child, something is wrong with your character. Yes, something is wrong with you. If you're afraid to say, I was wrong, I'm sorry. If you're afraid to let a child know when you're wrong and apologize without feeling that you were belittled, you're wrong. Sometimes something that children do not deserve apology. So true. And pride, man, this is pride. You're in a class and you make a mistake. You apologize to the class. Students, says, and I knew, I think I was wrong. So I want to apologize to you. And you mend the relationship and you move on. And that's how children grow respect. That's how children grow respect for you as an adult. This question. Should parents allow children to fail? Should parents allow children to fail? And they learn how to apologize as well when they are wrong. So true. So true. It depends. It depends on what exactly. So, the answer to those questions, they are contextual. And age matters, of course. The age of the child matters. Development matters. Safety matters. The child's individual needs matter. But the principles remain. Clarity, consistency, proportionality, dignity. Always maintain the dignity of the child. Do not belittle them. Responsibility, support, and I'm going to end with love. With love. Now, a child, there are certain signs, you see, that may suggest that a child may be struggling with limits. If you're just joining, you're joining Leadership Unscripted. Our topic for tonight, the child who never hears no. The child who never hears no. That's our topic for tonight. If you're not following this platform, please follow this platform. I will follow you back as well as soon as the live is over. Please share the live, share it to a friend, and join in on the discussion. And while you're joining and you're listening, please tap the live and keep it broadcasting out there to other persons. Now, there are signs a child may be struggling with limits. And what are those signs? What are those signs that a child may be struggling with limits? A child may need more intentional support with boundaries if they regularly become highly distressed by minor disappointments. Expect adults to change rules after protest, overstep boundaries, social Monday, blame others for most problems, struggle to wait, interrupt constantly, react aggressively to correction, have difficulty losing games, refuse responsibilities they do not enjoy, expect immediate reward for everything, struggle to accept peer boundaries, treat privileges as right, apologize only to avoid consequence, and believe fairness means always receiving what they want. If you see those things in a child, it means they are struggling with limits. They're struggling with boundaries. And as adults, it is our job to step in and start developing those skills because if we don't develop those skills from they're young, they'll become adults lacking and still struggle in these areas. So important clarification. One or two of these behaviors do not define a child because children are developing. So what if it's just two of them or one? You're not going to use that to say, oh, that child needs support. No. But when you see a lot of red flags popping up, you start, that child needs support. You don't ignore it. You don't ignore it and say the child is rude. No. You offer support. So here's a practical framework for you tonight. A practical framework. I'm going to spell the word boundary. B-O-U-N-D-A-R-Y. Boundary. The B you must always be clear. Say what the expectation is in language this child can understand. Avoid vague instructions such as behave yourself. Instead, say, use a respectful voice. Keep your hands to yourself. Complete the task before using the device. You must be clear. Be clear as it relates to what exactly you want them to do. Offer limited choices. Children benefit from appropriate choice within adult limits. For example, you may complete the homework before dinner or immediately after dinner. It must be completed before screen time. You must understand the emotion. Acknowledge the child's feelings without removing the limit. Acknowledge their feeling. Their feelings and emotions matter. Acknowledge it. But you don't remove the limit. I know you're angry. I understand that you are disappointed. However, you still need to do so and so and so. So you acknowledge their emotions and feelings, but you never yield. N, never reward escalation. If shouting changes the answer, shouting becomes a successful strategy. If shouting changes the answer, if they throw a tantrum and you change your no to yes, it becomes a successful strategy for them and they will always use it. D, deliver proportionate consequence. Consequences should fit the behavior and the child's age. Consequences should fit the behavior and the age of the child. Always remember that. Adults must be aligned. When one child says no and another secretly says yes, the child learns to divide authority. So when one adult says no, dad says no and mom says yes. Or mom and dad says no and grandma and grandpa says yes. The child learns to divide authority. This does not mean adults must never disagree. It means disagreements should be handled away from the child. You don't argue in front of the child. You don't take sides in front of the child. No. Children must stay out of adult discussion. Children must never be in in disagreements between two adults. Children should not be in the middle of debates between adults. No. Don't ever do that. And this one are repair relationships. After conflict, reconnect with the child. The child should know, I did not approve of your behavior, but I still love you. So after you apply the consequence, but ensure that you reconnect. You want to repair that relationship. Let the child know, I didn't appreciate. I didn't approve of what you just did. I had to apply the consequence, but you know I still love you. And it's because I love you why I'm applying the consequence. I can't ignore it. and you have a discussion with your child. That's you repairing relationship. And this one, which many of us as adults, we struggle with. Yield when the adult is wrong. When you're wrong as an adult. When you've wronged a child. Yield, man. Yield. Apologize. Consistency does not mean stubbornness. If the adult misunderstood, overreacted, or created an unfair rule, the adult should correct it. Adults model accountability by admitting mistakes. Always remember that. Adults model accountability by admitting mistake. If you made a mistake, if as a teacher, you listen to one side of the story and punish and apply consequence to another child unfairly without hearing the consequence, because without hearing the full story, and when you hear the full picture now, you realize you are wrong. Apologize. Apologize. Apologize, please. Apologize. Apologize. Don't give a consequence that you can't follow through with. That's true, Mandy. Never give a consequence you cannot follow through on. So every night, this segment of the show is called the family table. And this is where I give you a question that will drive discussion and debate in your home, in your workplace, while you're out with friends, with your children, whatever. Because I want you to, when you're discussing, when you're having conversation, we're not discussing people, we're not discussing trivial things. We're discussing things that will grow us. So the question for tonight on the family table: what is one disappointment that helped you become stronger? What is one disappointment that helped you become stronger? So parents can share time when they did not get what they wanted. Share those experiences with your child. Children can talk about losing, waiting, making a mistake, or hearing no. Then discuss. What did you feel? How did you respond? What did you learn? And what would you do differently now? Because remember, are we preparing children to manage the world? Or are we trying to make the world remove every discomfort from their path? Are we preparing children to manage the world? Or are we trying to make the world remove every discomfort from their path? We need to know the distinction. So here's tonight's challenge. During the next 24 hours, identify one boundary you have been inconsistent about. Identify one boundary as a parent, as a teacher, that you have been inconsistent about. Do not choose 10, just one boundary. But you know sometimes you're not so consistent with it. It may involve bedtime, screen time, chores, respectful communication, doing homework, spending, interrupting, family responsibilities, how the child treats siblings, how the child responds to adults. Just choose one. One boundary that you have been inconsistent with. Then I want you to do 3 things. After you've identified the boundary that you have been inconsistent with, I want you to do 3 things. First, explain the expectation clearly to the child. Then, explain the reasonable consequence. And third, follow through calmly. So you're not going to shout. Do not threaten something you cannot maintain. Do not give a 20-minute speech. Do not go and preach now. No. Be calm. Be clear. Be consistent. And remember, the purpose is not to win a power struggle. No. The purpose is not to win a power struggle. The purpose is to teach the child a life skill. So before we close, I want you to type this in the comments. Love needs boundaries. I want you to type that in the comment. I want to see that sentence coming up, that statement coming up in the chat. Love needs boundaries. Love needs boundaries. Love needs boundaries. So children need adults who celebrate them. Children need adults who celebrate them. Children need adults who comfort them. Children need adults who protect them. But children also need adults who prepare them. So children need adults who celebrate them, comfort them, protect them, but they also need adults who prepare them. Hi, Sky. I'm not high. I'm not high. A child who never hears no may eventually hear it from a world that is less patient. So a child who never hears no may eventually hear it from a world that is less patient, less forgiving, and less invested in their growth. Our responsibility as adults is not to remove every disappointment. Our responsibility is to help children experience disappointment safely, manage it appropriately, learn from it, and move forward with dignity. Remember, in every situation, ensure you protect the dignity of the child. You're not belittling them. A child should never walk away from an experience feeling less than, feeling belittled, feeling like they're worth nothing. Never. You should never do that. As adults, you should never humiliate a child. No, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't ever do that. So we are not raising children only for childhood. We are raising future adults. Remember that. We are raising future partners, future employees, future employers, future neighbors, future parents, future citizens. So the aim is not unquestioning obedience. The aim is self-discipline, responsibility, empathy, resilience, sound judgment, and character. Because we are raising partners, employees, employers, neighbors, parents, and citizens of the world. That's what we are raising. So it is our job. It is our job to aim for self-discipline, responsibility, empathy, resilience, sound judgment, and character. Remember, I'm going to close with this. Remember, a loving adult does not prepare for the road for the child. A loving adult does not prepare the road for the child. A loving adult prepares the child for the road. Listen to this. A loving adult does not prepare the road for the child. A loving adult prepares the child for the road. So you don't prepare the road for the child. You prepare the child for the road. It means it is your job. It is your job as the adult to teach the skills needed for them to become functional citizens. It is your job as the adult to teach children the skills needed to become functional citizens. Always remember that. Your job. Your job. And if every answer from you is yes, if every answer from you is yes, if they don't understand that no means no, if they know how to push your boundaries to get you to change your response, you're teaching them that that behavior is acceptable. Is shouting and crying get you to change your yes to your no to yes? You're teaching them that every time they want something, crying is the way to get it. If complaining all the time and you take their side and never having that conversation to let them know that they are wrong and there are consequences for doing things wrong. If you don't teach those skills, you're raising an adult who will always want things their way. If your child is not hearing no, if all they hear is yes, and when they become an adult, and they're in the real world and a boss, an employer tell them no. A girlfriend or boyfriend tells them no. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? They go for a job interview and they hear no. What do you think is going to happen? If you're always jumping to their rescue, life will be miserable for them. Life will be miserable for them. Life will be miserable for them. So sometimes, as educators, to all the educators on the land, sometimes as educators, and when you have parents and they come to you, sometimes they come disgruntled. Listen to them. But start your conversation with this: what we're trying to develop, the adult we're trying to make of your child. Start with the importance of taking ownership, of accepting responsibility for your actions. Start the conversation from that angle. Sometimes it is our job to let parents know where they're going wrong. And adults, when you're wrong, we're not going to always get it right. We're not going to always get it right. Sometimes we react with emotions and we apply the wrong consequence. We say the wrong things slip out of our mouth at times. We're human. The wrong things slip out of our mouth. Apologize now. Yes, man. Apologize. Never be afraid to apologize. That will get the child to respect you. And you're also teaching a valuable lesson. You're teaching that child that you're never too big to take accountability for your actions. So what you do when you dance around things you're wrong and you remain wrong and strong? No, you can't do that. You can't do that. People lose respect for you. So we're not going to always get it right. But remember, when we're dealing with little people, it is what we do or actions dictate what they will be and what they will look like and how functional they will be when they become adults. So it is our job. It is our job. It is our job. It is our job. Nikki says, sometimes we try to raise our children to live up to the Jones expectations. That's true. That's true. So true. So true. So true. And we're too tired to apply consequence. You're too tired to apply consequence. And you laugh about certain things. Then you come to pick up your child from school. And you take the child straight to Burger King on your way home. What lesson are you teaching? What lesson are you teaching? Parents sometimes go out of their way for children to fit in rather than stand out. That's true. So true, Nikki. Your child misbehave at school. And on your way home with that child, you stop at Burger King. You negotiate with them. If you behave yourself in school, if teacher don't have to call me, I'll take you to Command Bay weekend. What foolishness is that? What foolishness is that? Children should know that it is the expectation that when they go to school, they must be respectful. They must follow the rules of the school. You don't negotiate with children. You don't negotiate with children. Teachers too. If you behave yourself, I'm going to treat all of you to a class party. No. No, no, no. No, no, no. You don't do that. You don't do that. You don't do that. Never negotiate with children. Don't negotiate with children. Don't reward them for doing what is expected. Do not reward children for doing what is expected. Don't ever do that. If you're expected to come to school, behave yourself. If you're expected to do your homework, why am I going to reward you for doing your homework? Why am I going to reward you for doing your homework? And another thing I see some, good night. I can't pronounce that name. Good night. Thank you for joining. Another thing I see some parent doing, you pay the child to spread their bed. You're paying the child to wash up after themselves. You're paying the child to prepare their items for school. You're paying them. You're paying them. What kind of foolishness is that? Pay what? What life lesson are you teaching there? Paying them to spread their own bed? Paying them to clean their own shoe? Because they remember to pack their bag, you pay them? Okay, so when they become an adult, who's going to pay them to turn up to work on time? Oh, you don't come to work, you don't get any pay. You see the difference? You see the difference? You see the difference? Be careful. Be careful of our reward systems at home and at school. Man, they say some of the parents are scared of the children. The parents, be careful of the reward systems you have at home. Think about it. Is this limiting my child? If all the days of their life when they're young, you're paying them to keep their room tidy. You're paying them to get up early and prepare them. Oh, you got up early every day this morning. You got up early for school, and you brush your teeth and you took a shower. I didn't have to wake you up. So here's $10 allowance. What $10 allowance? No, you're wrong. You're wrong. That is expected. When they become an adult, who is going to pay them to get up and reach work early? Let them don't reach work. They don't have a job. And that's why some of them become adults and can't keep a job. And that's why we have so many tardy adults. So many tardy and unproductive adults in the workplace. It started from they were children. Everything they do, it must come with a reward. No, you can't do that. Cannot do that. You cannot do that, parents. Things that is expected of children, they must not be rewarded for doing it. You're setting the wrong example. You can't reward children for doing their homework. What's going to happen when you don't have the reward to give them? What's going to happen? When you don't have the reward to give a child. Thank you, Cashmere, for that rose. Thank you very much. Told their daughter she's pretty so she doesn't need to work as hard as others. Exactly. Let me tell you, parents, sometimes the things we say Sometimes the examples we set for our children is not the right one. It's not the right one. It's not the right one. And sometimes we're the one, you're limiting your child. You're limiting your child. You don't allow them to solve problems. Everything you roll out red carpet for them. They sit around the table, they have their dinner. You have to take up their plate from in front of them. Okay then. They can't stand on the sink and wash a plate. Even if they don't wash it good, let them wash it. And then you go and wash it over. But let them wash it. When they wake, they jump out the bed. And gone, and you round there and bend your back. A spread bed. No. Let them spread it. And if they don't spread it properly, you call them and spread it and show them how to spread it. That's how you teach them life skills. That's how you teach them life skills. That's how you teach them life skills. When they forget to do the homework, you tell them to do it and they don't do it. Take them to school